What's up, guys? MC Stu here, and today I want to talk about if Star Trek Online is worth playing in 2023. Talk a little bit about the state of the game overall, and look at it from the aspect of someone that may want to play the game completely for free. So let's talk about first what Star Trek Online is. So Star Trek Online is an RPG MMO based around Star Trek. There are multiple different factions that you can play as: Federation, Klingon, Romulan, and Jem'Hadar, and there is quite a few races within those, and on some of those factions you can align with other factions, and it's fairly large and in-depth just in terms of that. There's 3 different classes to play in the game. You can play as an engineer, tactical, or a science officer. The universe within the game is very, very large, and we'll just kind of take a look at the map. I'm sitting here on a social zone right outside of ESD, or Space Dock. This is the map for that area. If we go up to what's called sector space, then you have these huge areas: the beta quadrant, alpha quadrant, the delta, and the gamma quadrant, all being available depending on the speeds of your ship, especially as a max tier player. It can take quite a while to traverse these areas. Most of these systems have patrols or kind of mini side quest kinds of things that you can do. And so the galaxy within the game is huge that you can access. There are multiple battle zones that you can enter that are very large, ground and on space, where you accomplish different objectives in the battle zone, preferably as a group. It goes faster that way, and you can get rewards and things like that and resources from the game. There still is at least one space PvP battle zone. If you decide to enter that, you will basically be enemies or can fire upon other players that are of a different faction than yourself. So the universe overall is vast, and there is a lot to explore and do across the galaxy here. Let's also take a look at the storyline missions that we have. So if we click on the episode journal here, there is a huge amount of content to play in the game, especially if you are someone new, have never played it, or have just started. You can spend a ton of time playing through all the different story missions. Some of the earlier ones are okay, especially when you get into the middle of it, it gets really good, and a lot of the current ones are done very well. I find that it's a little hit or miss depending on, if you're a new Trek, old Trek, or, if you just don't care. I just don't care. I like it all. If it's Star Trek, I'm going to play it. But there's a massive amount. The beginning missions are somewhat specific to your faction. So, for instance, if you start as a Klingon, your first, 10 to about 10 episodes or more are going to be specific to that faction. Same thing with Romulan. And also same thing with Jem'Hadar. At least the first mission, the order is a little bit different. But depending on the faction you play, there's going to be a large storyline that's specific to that. And then you'll get into stuff like once we get to the Borg Advance or Cardassian, I think, it goes off, and any of the factions will be able to do those. So the amount of missions, questing, they call them patrols, side quests, battle zones, it's huge. You can spend years and years playing through this, especially if you start, unlocking, or not unlocking, but rolling multiple characters. You can roll multiple characters in the game. They are connected through an account bank, so you can share resources with different characters, which can be very helpful. In terms of being able to build up resources on a particular one to be able to buy and unlock different kinds of things in the game. That is something that was changed a few years back to where that is free, so you do not need to make any kind of special purchases now in order to unlock a shared bank between all of your characters. So you don't have to just pick one. You could pick one, start playing through that. You could take turns on a night or play through all of one faction and then do another. And there's a lot of individual different benefits other than just the actual storylines to the different factions. There are different racial traits. There's different ships and different things that are unique and special to not just the classes, but the actual faction that you decide to go ahead and pick from. So this is my main account. I actually have two. I have a free to play account as well. We'll talk about that aspect of it here in just a moment. But let's talk about kind of the nuts and bolts of the game and what really makes this a lot of fun. Let's just start with ground combat. It's a little lackluster. This game is 13 years old, and running around on ground isn't always the funnest, although there is some fun stuff to do. But this game really shines when it comes to the space combat. The space combat in the game is very, very good. There's nothing else like it. And what augments that even more is the building in the game. So putting together your ship builds and things like that. And I'll just kind of briefly show you guys, what you can kind of expect. So you have loadouts on your ships. Different kinds of ships have different amount of weapons in the front and back, and different kinds of console slots: engineering, science, tactical. Each ship will unlock a space trait. You can slot multiple space traits. If we take a look at that, you have personal space traits. You have reputation space traits. All of these things can synergize and stack and do all these different things. So some will, for instance, anchored, if you stay still for a certain amount of time, you start building up bonus damage, and you start losing resistance rating, or intelligence attaché using captain's abilities is going to refresh your or getting critical hits is going to refresh your captain's abilities, and it just goes on and on. I mean, it's so crazy, the amount of stuff, and for newer players that can be a little bit overwhelming. So there is a little bit of a learning curve to really start to kind of understand kind of how each of these things you want to build, so they all are kind of complementing each other. This is a torpedo build. Everything in it is built around doing more damage for torpedoes, or recharging my torpedoes faster, or debuffing a target based on torpedoes and debuffing it for kinetic damage, and it goes on and on and on. And so the amount of layers to building and putting things together is just a ton of fun for me, and I know many others that play the game. There's some nights where I log in and I'm not even really doing a lot. I just the whole time I'm just maybe doing a new build, or I'm trying something new. And like with most games, there are the meta builds, but that range in Star Trek Online is pretty big. If you're not someone that's trying to just absolute min-max, you can do just crazy amounts of good damage and performance and tanking, all kinds of different things with very unique builds that you come up with, because the system is so large and so layered that that scope of potential is very, very big, and that's what makes it nice. I've played some games where, like SOTOR, for instance, which I like that game, but the way the gearing system is, if you're going to do a particular thing, you build a specific way. Everybody kind of does the same thing, and there's very little variation. This game is the extreme opposite of that. On top of traits, you have bridge officer seating and different abilities that they can do and specializations that they can do. Your individual bridge officers have different racial traits and things like that also augment them and allow them to do different kinds of things, be it more hull or more damage. So that's a whole rabbit hole we can kind of go down separately, and I have tons of videos. If you're getting into the game and you're trying to learn this stuff, check out the beginner's guide player list that I have. It'll be real helpful for you. But the point is that the game really kind of captures, I think, what I like about Star Trek and the engineering and the science, and how there was always, these crazy things that, they would come up with to win the day and that kind of thing. And this game really captures that in terms of the, the building of your ship and your character and your bridge officers. And this is the same also on ground. It's just not as, it's not as deep and layered, although it is there, it's just smaller. So the building aspect of, putting together your ships and your builds, you're really not restrained by any kind of one meta, which is really what I like. There are some basic things that you need to follow. Once you start to level and get high enough, if you're not following those, you'll have problems. But again, there's lots of resources out there that can help you through those things and set it up. And like I said, most of this game for me, while the space combat itself is amazing, it's just as fun, coming up with an idea, trying it out, seeing if it works. And there's really nothing else like it when it comes to putting together builds and gearing and things like that. So the game is good. I have played for about 6 or 7 years. The game's 13 years old, so it is an older game. The space side of it still looks very good. A lot of the ground, especially the newer stuff, looks good. But in some of the older missions, you're going to notice it feels a little dated. And again, the ground combat is a little bit clunky. So let's talk about the free-to-play side, and then we'll also talk about some of the negatives. So I have an account that is 100% free-to-play. I'm almost 3 years in on it, and I've been able to acquire a lot of nice things. So if you're a free-to-play player, there is 4 events a year that will reward you with an event ship that's a tier 6, so there's different tiers of ships. And there's also a year-long event where you can claim a couple different prizes, one of which being 2 tier 6 coupons from the store. So the store has a massive amount of ships, and you can basically get any of 2 of any of these once a year. You can also get lockbox ships and some other things through this same event. But again, if you're a free-to-play player starting out, I would probably start with this because these are account unlocks and things like that. And I'm not going to get into a ton of detail on that. But if there's a ship that you saw on the show, you most likely will be able to pick that up out of the C store here. Regular price on a tier 6 ship's $30 US. But again, if you are free-to-play, you can at least earn 2 of these a year. And there's just a ton of stuff to pick from when it comes to ships, tons of it. So there's a particular one that you were looking for. It's most likely going to be in this game. The cool thing is that there's also a lot of variants to ships of a particular class, and on a lot of these ships that you get, you can, we call it kit bashing them. You can use different pylons, different nacelles, different things to kind of make the ship somewhat unique to you. Not all of them have a ton of that. Some of them have more than others. It is normally confined to the class of the particular ship. So that aspect of it's really nice as well. The character creation itself is crazy. It's probably next to Black Desert Online. It's probably has the most options and variety in cheekbones and hair and uniforms and on any kind of aspect you can think of, which is really cool in terms of the Space Barbie. So there's quite a number of high tier nice ships that you can get completely free every year. The other thing that Star Trek Online has that is really nice is what's called the dilithium exchange. So dilithium is a resource that you earn by playing the game, doing TFOs is what they call them, or flashpoints if you're familiar with SOTOR. Mini raids, basically. Some of them are really short, some of them are a little bit longer. They're not super long, but they're equivalent to raids. There's different kinds of marks you can get in the reputation system to be able to buy items and unlock extra perks for your character. But you also earn dilithium, and you can refine a certain amount of dilithium every day. You can do this on multiple characters. You can accumulate on just one character if you want. So you can hit your limit on one and then on another and another all on the same day. And so you can up the amount of dilithium you're getting. What is really unique about this is you can actually take that dilithium and you can trade it on the exchange here for the real IRL currency. So in Star Trek Online, if you wanted to just buy a ship from the cash shop, you have to buy Zen, and from the Zen store then you can buy the ships. Star Trek Online has an exchange here where players that need dilithium can buy dilithium with Zen, which they purchase with real money from you, and you can make those trades. The market goes up and down. The times can vary. Right now it's in a pretty good spot, so you could exchange out your dilithium for Zen fairly easily. Depending on how much you were playing, you could probably get yourself a new C-Store $30 ship probably once a month, and that's if you were really pushing it. If you were just kind of casually playing every couple months, you could get yourself a ship like that. But it's really nice that there's not a lot of other games that have things like this where you can just play the game and you can buy items from the cash shop without actually ever spending real money. So basically every single thing in the game you can purchase without spending real life money, with the exception of a lifetime subscription. Lifetime subscription gets you a special ship and some other perks. You do not have to have that in any kind of way. Furthermore, on the free-to-play portion, none of the content is locked behind a paywall. So all of the missions, you can play through all of it. If you're not interested, really in all the shipbuilding, you just want to play some Star Trek, experience some cool stories, and just be in the Star Trek universe, you can do that completely for free. You don't have to have the top tier 6 ships or anything like that. You can play through this whole game with just what you pick up from the game and missions. I personally think it's funner, getting some of the better stuff, but you don't have to do that. If you just like Star Trek, you just want the feels, you just want to fly, a ship that you're somewhat familiar with, you can do most of that. Now, there are a few of the hero ships you can get for free at a tier 5 level when you're leveling, but it's somewhat limited and they're not super great. So let's talk about the monetization side of the game. If you come into the game and you want to fly, the Enterprise D basically at a tier 6 level, you're going to spend $30. If you want to fly, a ship that's really good or something that's somewhat rare in the game, like the Anoraks from the Voyager episode, I think that was in season 4 or 5. Something like that will be a promo ship, and they're going to be in lockboxes. And those can get very expensive. You can spend up to $200 or more trying to win one of those ships. The drop rates in the lockboxes are not made public to us. There has been testing by the community, and the rates are pretty low. So you're looking at 200 to 250 for most lockbox ships, and those are only for one character. They do not account unlock. Everything else you buy in the cash shop is account unlock for the most part. So if you buy a ship, you'll be able to use that ship across all your different characters. Even if you buy a Fed ship, you could use that on a Klingon character once you unlock that, which you can do for free in the game by leveling up a Klingon character. But if you are someone that does want to min-max and you really want to go to the extreme with builds, it can get extremely pricey. And I'll just give you an example. This ship right here, this is a little bit outdated now. I just pulled it out because I just really like it. But the gear that is on this ship and the traits that are on this ship, if you were to just whale out and spend the money to just get it, opening boxes and buying C-store ships and all of that, you're looking at, $900 to $1,000. It's a lot of money if you're going to go to that high end of min-maxing. Now, you can do all of that without spending money, but that is going to take you years or just tons of grinding for dilithium in order to either buy keys to unlock lockboxes and or buy C-store ships. So it's doable, and you can do it for free in a short amount of time, but you would be better off just getting a part-time job, making the money and buying the stuff you want. Otherwise, the amount of time that that you have to put in is just, for me, it's too much. So on my free-to-play account, I have some pretty nice stuff. I have some pretty good, somewhat top-end builds that are probably, I would say, S tier. They're not the best in terms of if I'm comparing it to my main account that I do spend money on, but it's taken me about 3 years to get there. So, on day one, I was able to play through, go through all the missions, do very well. But if you're someone that really likes to min-max and push it, this game is expensive. Okay, it is going to cost you a lot of money to min-max it. But if you are somebody that just wants to casually play, you exchange some dilithium, maybe spend a little bit on the EC currency cap, it's $10 and a little bit here and there, and you're not after that min-max, you just want the Star Trek. This is where it's at, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it. You can literally just download the game and just play it. There's no subscription or anything like that you have to have. So it's unique in the way, in terms of the monetization side, where it's kind of to the extreme on both ends. You can basically have everything for free if you want to put the time in, or you can spend an absorbent amount of money to have everything you want in very little time. And I guess that's probably true with a lot of quote unquote free to play games. But this game goes to the extreme in both directions. So I guess in that sense, it's somewhat fair, where, things can get super expensive, but you can also buy anything you want without actually spending money. So you have to take that for what it's worth. I talk to people a lot in the community, and some people, think it's, they hate it and it's predatory, and, others are like, it's great, I can get anything for free. And I'm kind of sitting in the middle saying, well, it just depends on you. No one's making you play anything or do anything. So, I play a lot of other MMOs, and I think it's pretty fair. in terms of if you're just wanting to come in and play and have fun. If you're someone that just must min max and stuff and you don't have a lot of money to spend or a lot of time, or you don't want to wait for it, then you might find that you're a little bit salty, because at that point, from your perspective, it would be pay to win. But it's pay to win if you want to win fast. That's really kind of the bottom line. And I play pretty consistent, even on my free to play. You're talking 2-3 years to really kind of start getting up there. Now, you can put a little bit of money in, put it in the right places, and get some really good stuff going. But again, it just depends on how competitive you are and what you're looking to do. And so with that being said, in terms of the competitive and the high-end side, we should also talk about end game, okay? This game does not really have an end game, and we get that question all the time. I finished the storyline, what do I do now? Well, what you would do now, I think according to Cryptic Studios, is roll a new character of a different faction or a different class and play through the story and build and do the things in that kind of a manner, than how you did, say, with your tactical Fed. Now run a tactical Klingon or a Romulan engineer or something like that, because once you do finish all the story content, all you have is the mini raids, and there is quite a few of them to do, and I'll just show you a list of them here. So this is all of them, and they are a lot of fun. There's ground and space ones. Some are funner than others, and there's quite a good amount of time that you can spend just doing these. You can run them as random queues where you get additional resources, but you'll get additional resources for what? If I've already beat, quote unquote, the game, played all the missions. And so that would be resources to continue to upgrade your build and get reputation items and different things like that. But it's, as you're doing that, what are you doing with your ship after that? You're running these things some more and trying to get even higher damage and those kinds of things. I know a couple people that, they've played since beta. They don't really chase the meta, and they just enjoy, new ships that come out and different things and getting them, flying them around, trying out the new puzzles of ship building and seeing how they work. So that's really kind of the end game, and it's really kind of made up by the players. It's not really designated by the game itself, because once you finish, all of the quest and all of the story, there's nothing defined specifically for you to do other than to kind of tool around the universe. And, if you have a group of friends that you play with, and there's some great communities in Star Trek Online, you can have a lot of fun doing things with your fleet and PvP and rerunning some of the missions together, or, doing these raids together and, accumulating more of this stuff in order to build. But there is this gap, and, I've had discussions with longer term players and stuff where, we've all kind of carved out what our end game is. But when we really sit down and think about it and say, well, what is the end game on Star Trek Online? How would we describe that to somebody? There isn't really one. It's made up by us. So there's third-party parser softwares that also have tables for DPS on particular maps. We call them parse maps. That's one thing that people will do. Others just literally every couple days or nights or weeks, they just come up with some new idea. They're thinking for a build that might do X, Y, or Z. Drain build, shut down shields, or torpedo build, or different kind of energy weapon builds, or debuff, or maybe it's just a support build or a tank or healing. And so, but once you've proven that, there's not a lot to really do with it, because even once you get to a certain level and you've played for a little while, it's just not quite hard enough to say you must have all these different kinds of things in order to complete the raids. Now, you do need to have those things, that trinity, if you're going to, be chasing those high DPS numbers on the parse tables and the DPS tables. But again, that is just made up by the players. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but if you're looking for a Star Trek experience, there really isn't anything else. I mean, there's Fleet Commander, the app, I think it might be for PC now, but it's nothing like this. It doesn't even come close. I can beam onto the bridge of my ship and move around. There's not a ton to do in there. There are some unique bridges, Fed, Klingon, and a lot of different alien ones. So there's just cool stuff to check out, but you'll find you get to places where there's not really kind of anything to do there per se. But it's still nice in terms of, being able to do that. They have basically kind of the full Enterprise interior, Enterprise D. And when I say full, I mean some hallways, transporter room, 10 forward, captain's quarters, bridge, engineering, holodeck is there. Same thing with a few of the other hero ships as well. So I know I'm kind of all over the place here, but I mean, the game is so vast. It's been around for so long. They're continually adding to it. And it really feels like it was developed and made, and then it was actually bought by another company right after that. But they never really flushed out the end, right? So what we have once you play through all the stuff, and again, we're talking end game at this point, because you have years worth of content to play through before, you know, you could find yourself even in this position. But we're kind of all over the place, because basically people are all over the place making up whatever it is. There's people that use the tailor to make their characters look like all kinds of stuff, crazy Klingon warriors to Buzz Lightyear to, I mean, you name it. And a lot of them are able to nail it. So, you know, there's a ton of stuff to do. I find after 7 years, I'm doing a lot of just kind of hanging out with friends in Discord, and we're just kind of trying new things out. But there's not really any kind of objectives to do once you've played for that long and really kind of accumulated everything that you wanted to. And I'm not someone that goes out and buys every single brand new ship for $30 or the promo ships either, because it's just it adds up. You know, if you have a budget of, you know, $30 a month, you know, I have to, you know, put into games or more, then you're fine. You can pick up, you know, a ship here and there and do what you want with that. So, but overall, the game is good. You get some bugs here and there, but I mean, I play Star Citizen and a couple other games, and so, you know, relatively speaking, it is not terrible in terms of that. But there are some. The company running it is not a huge staffed company. The game has been around for a long time. But new content is coming out constantly. Well, regularly, let's say. There's a schedule for it. It's not a lot. It's probably 3 to 4 missions a year right now that we're seeing. But with all the new Star Trek on TV and things like that, and they cross over and integrate that into the game itself. And this is the Janeway from Discovery, and there's tons of ships from all the different kinds of shows. I think that the game will probably be in good shape and around for quite a while here. So if you are looking at, you know, getting into it in 2023, we got a good long time, I think, left with Star Trek Online, even though it's been around for as long as it has. But you know, the interest in Star Trek, I mean, there's a whole new generation now that, you know, being able to see Star Trek for the first time that may have not watched, you know, TNG and Voyager and Deep Space Nine, those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of interest in it. And I will say there's some very talented people over at Cryptic Studios on the dev team in terms of the design and the reskins on things. They've continually updated the way the game looks and things like that. There are some, you know, times where you'll be on ground, you're like, man, this looks bad. There's a lot of them, though. The newer stuff that looks good, the space stuff looks good, and the ship modeling looks really, really nice. And there's hundreds and hundreds of ships that you can pick from. So I'm sorry, guys, it's kind of all over the place. I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out on this. I've been really kind of thinking about it for, you know, the last few months, wanting to kind of talk about this with you guys. If anyone is interested in the game, wanting to check it out. Again, I know this isn't kind of a, you know, step-by-step, here's X, Y, and Z. This is just kind of my thoughts on where the game is, you know, the monetary side of it, the free-to-play side of it, the scope of the game in general. So I hope I answered your questions. If you are someone new wanting to check it out, you got nothing to lose by downloading it and checking it out. It is 100% free with no paywalls in terms of content. If you have questions, join the Discord server. There's a link down in the description, and awesome community in there. We have over 2,500 people in it. There's a lot of other communities as well that are awesome and cross-linked. Everyone is more than willing to help you out. A lot of players will get in and just find it's kind of overwhelming because there's a lot of stuff, and there's not really an excellent tutorial for really the nuts and bolts of the game. They kind of tell you how to get from A to B and things like that, but that's about it. So I do have guides for brand new players in the beginner guide playlist, so check that out if you're new. If you're thinking about giving it a try, I would say give it a try. You ain't got nothing to lose. Like I said, it is free. Just be aware, though, if you get hooked in and you need to have the latest shiny, it can get very expensive. So all right, guys, well, I hope that was helpful for you. If you have questions, comments, put them down in the comment section. Join the Discord server, say what's up. And if you have questions, we're more than happy to help you out. Until next time, guys, I appreciate you watching. Have a good one.